abandoned the theater and went to work in television, where I currently reside and have worked for the last 25 plus years. My current position is at Peacock, the streaming service. It's NBC Universal's answer to Netflix and all that kind of stuff. And I'm actually currently freelancing as a freelance project manager on all of their big brand campaigns that are going to be happening around the Olympics. And, but I do have connection to Queens because my daughter goes to Frank Sinatra. So yeah, so there you go.
Awesome, thank you. And Frank Sinatra is a CTE school. They have a bunch of CTE programs, including, I believe, film and media and drama and a couple other good stuff.
Dance.
Okay, too. Yeah, and dance, that's right. All right, so next up, let me do my alphabets. Okay, Nyland Johnson. I think I saw you earlier. If you wanna tell us your backstory.
Yeah, I rarely hear my last name nowadays. I'm Nyland. I work as an artist out in the world. I'm primarily a director. I am the Associate Artistic Director of the Drum League. This is a 105-year-old organization. It's the oldest theater organization in America. And we do a lot, from presenting award show to being an artistic home for directors. I'm also a freelance artist. I'm actually directing a TV show right now, and I'm sitting inside of a space because Ms. Lopez hit me up, was like, get to this. And I said, no problem. And so I will say that everyone's giving like their trajectory. Went to performance high school in North Carolina, went to college in California, went to Europe for a little bit to work, decided to come back to America, went to grad school back in North Carolina, ended up here in New York. The first place I lived was in Queens. I love Queens. I would have stayed in Queens if the rent was more friendly. But yeah, that's about it.
Awesome, thank you, Nyland, good stuff. Lots of Queens in the house. I wonder why. All right, next up we have Tony Kai.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tony Kai. I was born in New York City, grew up in Brooklyn. I do live in Queens now, but I work for a Microsoft startup subsidiary called Nerdio. Here's my my company logo. And our technology is used actually by the DOE in CTE environments. You know, those virtual desktops you guys go into, that's powered by our automation technology. So I went to school in Murray Bertram High School. It is I don't know if it's still around. I think it split and things happened, but graduated there. I went out to get my degree in computer science at Stony Brook University out on Long Island. And I worked out there for about 10 years. And now I work for the startup that I've been at for now 3 years. I'm currently the director of sales there.
Murray Bertram has CTE and PTech high schools within the campus.
Ah, that's right.
Mecca
so
is
still around. So it's still around. Okay, good.
Yeah, old schools in New York City, old buildings. Good stuff. Quite a history in New York. All right. Last but certainly not least, Yvette Baez. I don't know if she's here.
I'm here.
Oh, awesome.
Hi. I'll try to round this out by honing in on the commonalities of all of my co-panelists. Yvette Baez, I am the head of industry for pharma and OTC at Google, which essentially means that I lead a team of sellers. I am the child of Dominican immigrants, first-generation American, grew up in Washington Heights, moved to Massachusetts for high school, went to the University of Massachusetts at Amherst for my undergraduate degree. I went from client side, I started on the agency side like Al, then I went client side and ended up in media through television at Univision, where we expanded into digital pretty transformationally, which got me to the job that I love and my dream job, which is at a tech company, a very small tech company known as Google. Thank you so much for having us today.
Thank you, Yvette, for joining. And thank all of our panelists for joining us. So I'm gonna start off with what I'd like to call Corinne's kooky career questions, because I wanna keep this fun, I wanna keep this interesting. I'm sure that a lot of our students being in CTE programs have heard from a lot of panelists. So I'd really like to kind of dig a little further with you guys and just get some, some of those stories that maybe you don't typically share about your background and your career. So my first question, and maybe the way we'll do this is if the panelists want to just like raise their hand if they want to answer the question, and then you can just start talking. So I don't expect you guys to answer all the questions. So the first one, if you were to pick two people who influenced you in your career, who would they be? Think about that one for a second. I guess that's a tough question. Oh, Carol's ready to go. All right, go Carol.
So sort of macro and micro. Carol Burnett, the Carol Burnett Show. Exactly. The Carol Burnett Show was on when I was a little kid, and she made me want to get into the business. And so, yeah. Also, her name was Carol, and that's kind of an unusual name. And then there was this woman, she was when my first job in television was at Nickelodeon. Her name is Sima Zargami. At the time when I first got hired, she was the vice president of programming, and she worked her way up to the, chairperson of Nickelodeon or MTV Networks, Kids and Family, basically like the high muckety muck. And I just found she was a fantastic boss to me. Some people didn't like her, but whatever. And she was extremely inspirational, and her, kind of no nonsense combination of hard ass, but not mean, was sort of the template for how I like to lead.
Good one.
I'm happy to go.
All right, go for it.
So one also kind of imaginary and one real person. My first job, the person that influenced me the most was a woman named Elizabeth Maitland. I was working at an ad agency in New York, and I was the first person in my family to get an undergraduate degree, subsequent graduate degree, and the first person to work in corporate America. So the reason that she was the most influential is one day she pulled me aside and she told me that what I was wearing was not appropriate for work. And for many of us who don't have family and friends who grew up in corporate America, nobody teaches you about these kinds of things. And it wasn't that I was wearing things that were inappropriate. It just was that it wasn't polished enough. And I'll never forget, she took me to Ann Taylor in the early 90s, and I bought my first suit. She was like, you have to have a couple of staples that you can mix and match. So she made me buy a blazer, some slacks, and a skirt, and a couple of blouses. And she was like, with this, you can have infinite possibilities. And it's funny because I did not even remember her until this very moment where you asked that question. Like, I don't actively think of her, but I thought it was pertinent to share with this group specifically. And then the second one is Judith Light's character on Who's the Boss. For many young brown girls, we didn't know that advertising and media was a thing or a career possibility. And for those of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s watching television, there were very few depictions of professional women on television. So to see her be like the head of this agency was fascinating to me. And I decided that I wanted to write jingles. And that's how I got into advertising. How it ended up is a whole nother story, but it inspired me to go down the path of advertising and media.
Awesome, that's a great story. And even if it didn't end up in an advertising career, I think just the role model of having a woman holding a professional position was inspiring in itself, it sounds like. Good stuff. All right. Anyone else want to answer that question? If not, I can move on. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So I don't have a person, but maybe an event that happened, right? So I grew up in Brownsville, Brooklyn, which is sort of not the best neighborhood, right? And there was a library that was across the street from my apartment. And I used to go across the street and sign up to use the computer, right? and they would just skip me, and they would do all sorts of things to make me not have the time that I requested on the list. So that ended up, I asked my parents to buy me a computer, and I had no interest in computers back then, and that's how I kind of got into that. And so it's maybe an event that happened, not any particular person. Well, there is a person, whoever did it. I don't know the guy's name or his or her name, but
good stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's always really interesting to think back on this idea of like what inspired you or what kind of pushed you into something, whether it was an event or a person. So that's why I think this is a good kind of question to throw around. Anyone else want to give their little bits of who inspired or what inspired? No.
I was when I don't know if they still do them, but Reading Across America used to be like a huge program as a kid, and Ruby came to our school, and I got to meet this woman who I met through a TV screen that my mom loved, and I knew she was important and really quiet kid, and she told me a lot of kids were being loud, and she pointed me out for being the quiet one. And she said, repeat what I just said, and I could repeat it all back. And she made me feel good about being like the quiet kid. And it's okay to be silent sometimes. And then also a teacher, Kathy Irvin, who reminded me, and still does now when she checks in with me, that your skill set is different than your career. Your skill set means you will always have a job. Your skill set means that you will always adapt. Your career can be a tunneled focus. And sometimes that's not the way to look at life or look at your opportunities. And I always have taken that advice.
That's great advice. Yeah, I think we talk about things like transferable skills. I think the teachers probably know about that. So that's kind of a similar idea. And I think that's definitely a hot topic these days with people career changing because of what's been going on in various industries with COVID. So that's definitely an important and good lesson. All right, so I think I'm gonna move on unless anyone else wants to weigh in on that. I don't see any more hands. No, okay. So, so I want you guys to just tell me what is something that you read, listen to, or participate in to stay on top of trends in your industry. Because we all know that it's really important, whether we're starting off in a career or we're trying to learn about a certain industry, to kind of be involved in it in some way. Either it's through a network or events you go to or people you socialize with, or maybe it's blogs you read or podcasts you listen to or books you read or whatever, journals, anything. What are some things that you do particular to your industry? And just tell us what that industry is, what you would call it, that kind of keep you abreast of what's going on. And again, feel free to raise your hand or just unmute yourself. Yeah. Okay, Al, go, sorry.
I'll put this out and say that it doesn't have to be industry specific. What it can be is leveraging LinkedIn. And in leveraging LinkedIn, you can decide what industries and what categories you have an interest in. If you're interested in, if you want to be a YouTuber, you could find social media management or social media speakers, social media bloggers and influencers that you can follow. Or you could join groups for free that you can follow. So across all of the CTE spectrum, there's always someone that you can identify and you can follow. And then the other part and compliment I'll say to that is, I always say go to the Google. So, and not just because Yvette is on, but go to the Google because the answer is usually just a search away. And by typing, most popular chefs or chefs on YouTube or whatever it is that you might be interested in, there's an ability to find that content or a person or speakers that inspires. Because a lot of times people go in and they're like, well, I don't know who to follow. I don't want to be in some of these groups because they feel too adult or I'm intimidated. So there are ways to just search and identify what it is. And then you can be passive or active as passive as you want.
Good advice. And you can also do searches on LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn itself has a lot of a lot of those groups, and you can find, I think, even by age, like youth versus senior, you know. All right, anyone else want to weigh in?
I agree with Al. So I actually, that's probably my primary way of getting new information about my specific industry. So we sell Azure Public Cloud, and believe it or not, inside of Microsoft, there are people with the titles Global Black Belt, which of a specific Azure product, and those guys are experts in that very specific niche inside of Microsoft. And I do follow them, and anything new that comes out, they're typically the first ones that know about them, so they'll share it in LinkedIn, and that's actually how I get my most of my latest information. Wouldn't everybody want that title, right? Global Black Belt.
Any black belt, any black belt.
I'll go.
All right.
Mine are two actual articles that one of them is Deadline and the other one is Synopsis. And I read those every single day. And some of it is just dish and some of it is real, like hardcore industry news. And in Synopsis, which anytime I do an interview with somebody or, you know, have an intern and they're sort of graduating, I make sure that they subscribe to Synopsis because there's lots of entry-level positions that are posted that are actually real jobs. And it's very, very useful to stay up on TV media trends.
And I think watching a lot of TV, Carol, right, for your bio helps also.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to know what you're working in. So got to watch TV.
Actually, speaking of the bios, I don't know if I shared that. I don't think I did. Joyce, I don't know if you're able to post that in the chat. If not, I could try to dig around. Or Natalie, if you could just post that in the chat, that would be great. For students who didn't get a chance to read our panelist bios. Does anyone else want to answer that question about, Nyland, go ahead.
Al brought up Google. There's a feature called Google News, and you can make the internet work for you to your email address. If, say, you are interested in YouTube or YouTubers, anytime there's a new article involving the word YouTubers, you can have it sent directly to your email. And then you can get more specific as you go. If you want to follow this specific person or this specific trend. I use it all the time, especially when there's something new wave and I just want to figure out what the field is talking about it. Also, something very theater specific is Broadway Briefing, which every day will come to Monday through Friday will come to your email boxes, pretty accurate and a big wide eye of what's going on there. And I just want a second Synopsis. I was like, yep, exactly what came to my brain.
Good stuff. So 2 for Synopsis. That definitely makes it legit. All right. Anybody else want to weigh in? Okay, so I'm going to move on, and I will post those bios in just a minute. Sorry about that. So we are dealing with students who may not be sure about what career path they're going to go into. And I don't expect that even folks that are well into their career may be set to stay in that career. They may be thinking about career changing themselves. So what advice would you give to a young person, maybe a high school senior or someone just starting college, about trying to kind of figure out what career path they want to go into? If you have any, try to think back maybe on what that felt like and maybe what helped guide you in some ways.
I'll kind of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, Tony. I was just going to say co-ops, internships. I feel like one of the things that we don't have accessible to us as much is just the knowledge based on the types of careers that exist in tech. So to the extent that you can try to find a part-time opportunity, whether it's paid or unpaid, part of knowing what you want to do is also uncovering what you know you don't want to do. And the only way that you can really get that knowledge base is to try it. So I would encourage everyone, going back to the LinkedIn plug, I last year found my daughter several summer employment opportunities on LinkedIn. I know we don't necessarily think about seeking out teenage job opportunities on LinkedIn, but there are plenty. They also have rotational programs where you could work for like one company for multiple summers. So those of you who don't have a LinkedIn account, I implore you to please set one up and make yourself aware of the opportunities that exist within whatever field you're interested in to find a job today, because they are out there. Sorry, Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, and to add to that, I would say Glassdoor is another, good place to kind of look. There's always new job offerings, and it kind of give you like the culture of the company that you might be wanting to look for, as well as the expected salary of the position you would want. So I'd start there. But I wanted to say that it's okay not to know, right? Because I didn't know when I was 18, and I didn't know maybe midway through college, and I kind of, I'm in sales for a technology company. And I think the word sales is sort of if I weren't in it, I'd probably think it's like a sleazy term, like, oh, sales guy, used car sales guy. But I love my job. Like, sales is just sort of the department I'm in, but I do use my engineering skills every single day, and it's part of what I do. So what I wanted to say is it's okay not to know. You're not late, you're not behind. Nobody expects you to know now, because I didn't know.
I'll chime in and say a term that happened, that a lot of people in business use: fail fast. And what that means is a multitude of things. One, try and get internships, similar to what Yvette said. If that's not available to you, again, going back to LinkedIn, on LinkedIn, try to connect to people that are going to your college or went to your college, people at companies that you like. The reality is this: if you make an effort to reach out to 10 people, and it's uncomfortable, if you reach out to 10, I bet you at least 3 respond on LinkedIn, right? Even just saying, hey, high school student or college freshman, figuring out my major. You seem to have a job that I like. Can we get a half hour on a Zoom or a call to talk? Extending yourself and networking is the answer to so many questions. So I would say the networking, the search on your own. Sometimes just go, again, to whatever search engine and type. Again, this is more media and technology kind of careers. Type media and technology careers, and then the things that you're good at. If you like working by yourself and problem solving, type that. If you are social and like being involved in a bunch of different things, type that. If you like programming, if you like gaming, if you like math, whatever it is, type some of the things that you like or that you're good at. And then it might come up with some jobs that you're not aware of. Because the reality is this: there are easily 15 different jobs in advertising of distinct skill sets, whether you're social, not social, whether you're good at math, not good math, whether you like to lead, not lead. And then on the opposite end, just in broader marketing and technology, there's easily 25 distinct other career paths within those as well that, most people only know 3. So there's all these things that are a great, perfect fit for you, or that you do a little bit of the research and.
Well, I think we're losing you a little, Al. But great tips, really important tips. I think just doing a search by things that you like or you're good at is a really great tip. Okay, and one other thing I'll also suggest on that note is you may not know what job you want to do, but you may be interested in a particular company or a type of business. And a great way to just look at what that business is about is to look at what jobs they offer and see if there's anything in there that interests you that you might want to get involved in. Okay, any other, oh, it's raining now here. Oh gosh, I guess the clouds came from Harlem. All right, here we go. All right, our next question. I'm on Long Island, by the way, so forgive me if I didn't make that clear at the beginning. All right, next question for our panelists. Okay, what are you most proud to have achieved in relation to your job or your career path overall? Could be your current position, or it could be a previous role you held, or just even before then. Maybe it was something while you were studying, while you were in college, that you're especially proud of. Okay, Carol, go for it.
Okay. I always wanted to work on Broadway from the time I was like 7 years old, and I did, and I'm extremely proud of that. Also, I'm very proud of the fact that I got to work in an international job for about 5 years and traveled to 30 countries during that time, and got to work with a huge diversity of different people and businesses and cultures, and that is my favorite part of everything I've ever done.
Awesome.
I'll pivot a little bit because I think that talking about money is something that's taboo in our society as Americans. I had set a goal for myself arbitrarily because I didn't really know what it meant, that I wanted to make $100,000 by the time that I was 30, and I am not 30. And I met the goal and beat it. I was 29 when I got my review coming out of graduate school, and I'll never forget. He's like, your new salary is $107,000. And he was a child of immigrants from New Jersey. He was an Irish kid who made his way through consumer marketing. And he and I had like this moment at my review where we both cried because we were like, this is literally such an immigrant story. It's like you come to this country, your parents come here with nothing, and you don't even know the value of $1. And I was like, I could not believe that I superseded that goal. I mean, in retrospect, Al is probably sitting there laughing because he can relate to this. It's like, that's not a lot of money, but it's just the fact that I had this specific goal in my head, and I'm almost 50. So we're talking about, almost 20 years ago. So it was a huge goal for me, and one that I just encourage everyone to ask for what you're worth and to know what your value is, because it's something that a lot of us are not taught.
Yvette, I had a similar goal. I beat it, and then my story is a little different. And that when I did beat that goal, I wasn't sure how to act. And what I mean by that is my friends didn't make that amount, so I couldn't really share with them because it might feel like bragging. The only friend that was close was a doctor, and they were still in med school. They were a resident. So I didn't really know how to invest the money. I ended up buying an apartment, but I didn't know how to manage the money and talk about the money without it feel like bragging. So I kept it to myself. And then again, a lot of the people in my industry didn't look like me. So I didn't have that aspect to bounce off of people to figure out, hey, am I worth this? I'm just some B student at Baruch, right? Like I'm getting $100,000. And mind you, just for prospective students, the average person in the United States makes between $45,000 and $50,000 a year now. And this was over 20 years ago. So it's one of those things similar to what Yvette said. Once you hit a goal, then you should reset and aspire to the next goal. But forget all of this imposter syndrome. Doesn't matter where you're from. There's no limitations to how much you can make in a lot of these industries. And $100,000, to Yvette's point, which sounds crazy to say out loud, $100,000 is the beginning. You can all make $100,000 before you are 30. I literally spoke to a mentee who is at $100,000 4 years out of college. She is not the only one who has done that in advertising or in tech. And I have some female mentees who are in tech, making over $100,000 in gaming. You can do what you like and get paid well. And I'll say this moderately disrespectfully, even if your parents don't know what you do and don't disagree on what you do, and disagree on what path you take, find champions like us to help guide them and reinforce to them that it's more than just being an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer and things of that nature.
Good one. All right. Alfonsina, I don't know if you want to say anything, or if Nyland or anybody else. No? Yvette? No? Okay, Yvette, you spoke.
Yeah, I mean, it's Joyce says financial managing is as important as Teresa says. And I'm a huge fan of financial literacy, because I say we make financial decisions all of our lives. All of our lives we're making financial decisions, and yet that's not something that is taught, right? And it's not taught in our schools. We learn how to manage money by messing up and by making a lot of mistakes. If we don't have parents who maybe are enforcing these lessons on us, then that's not gonna happen. So yes, and actually it was my own advice actually. I think that what Yvette and Al said, know what you're worth. It's such an important skill to use, especially when you are a person of color, especially when you're an immigrant. I came to this country as an adult, not knowing what the job market was, not knowing anything of. I didn't study here. Like, can I get paid as an American? Even though I don't have a degree here, that was all the things in my mind when I moved here. So yes, you you need to know what you're worth when you put yourself out there, and it's such a valuable thing for yourself to do. And I'm not in this panel, but I needed to say that.
Yeah. I just threw you in there under the bus there. So,
Corinne, can I just add one thing, because Al said it, and this may not resonate with you right now, but it is important that you have a network of people that you can talk to about money. When I was negotiating my package at Google, I was fortunate that I had two very good friends of mine, one at Facebook and one at Amazon, who told me what I could ask for. And they said, listen, I want you to know that this is where I think you should go, even though I couldn't get it, because I think you can negotiate your way there. And everything I asked for, they gave me. So you don't know what's out there for the taking until you have someone who can tell you how much there is to have.
And you shoot yourself in the foot. It's like, oh, I should have asked for more, right? Because they didn't even rebuttal.
Yes, absolutely. That's a very good recommendation. And to the students, when you become adults, be that person who shares what you make, because it's kind of horrible that people keep that so secretive, because it really is a major point of education in terms of career pathways that needs to be understood. So don't be shy about that. Another thing I'll just add to that is when you're looking at jobs, depending on the company, the same exact position can have very widely varying salary brackets. So also ask for the money based on the company and the type of company. Like a enterprise company versus a startup won't have the same budget to pay even for the same exact job title. And there are advantages to both. You may learn a lot more at a startup because you're given more responsibility and more initiative in a certain way, more autonomy, but you will not make as much money. But you'll make maybe more money at a bigger company, but your job might be very specific and insular where you don't get to explore other things, right? So there's always a payoff at the or a loss in some ways, depending on what path you decide to take. All right. So speaking of jobs and asking for stuff, I'm going to throw you guys a question that is normally asked during job interviews, and maybe some of you have been going through some of those yourselves recently. There's been a lot of career changing and job changing in this last year. So when the job interviewer asks you the question of describe a situation that you felt was challenging and tell me how you dealt with it, potentially in your current job or in another position that you held, how would you answer that question?
I hate those questions.
Oh my God,
That's
me
why I'm
too.
asking.
I hate it. I never ask it, and I don't know how to answer it.
Yes,
I ask
but
it all the time for 20 years.
Good. Yes, it's good.
Hate it.
Tell the kids, because it's a hard question to ask, right? So for the students here, it's a hard question to answer even as an adult who's been working for maybe 30, 40 years, right? But we would love to know what your answer would be to that, to give them some hints at how they might answer that question.
I'll answer it in a way that, like I generally answer it and I give them a situation where the client, you know, was mad at our company and I came in and I built the relationship, fixed the relationship, showed them our thinking and strategy and our value, and it worked out. So that's that answer. But what I really want to answer is, our stories are so important. Like everybody here will probably tell you how important storytelling is. And the reality is, before you go on an interview, there's probably about 5 to 10 questions. Where do you envision yourself in 3 to 5 years? Tell me something that you've overcome. What's your weakness? Your strength? What would your best friend say about you? There's a range of stuff that you will hear often. You need to practice and know your story. We talk about elevator pitches. We talk about storytelling. You need to be good at those things, even if you're acting and you're pretending that it's the first time you ever heard that question. Like, oh, something I've overcome, right? You got to sell it, right? So, but I think the storytelling and predicting what it is, because a lot of times it's like a play, you know, you kind of know what's going to happen next. So you should be prepared as more often as possible for being able to tell your story.
Can I answer that? What I'm going to say is, one, you don't ever have to present a negative into the room, one about yourself or about anybody else within your answer. That's the trap of that question. This question is supposed to be a human resource question. It's supposed to be like a question that opens up your humanity, because trauma is the so-called universal index to the soul. It's very lazy. It's embedded in America. But what I'm going to lift up what Al just said about storytelling. What's really important right here is that you have an opportunity right here to leave anything inside the room that you want to leave. You can the idea of challenging is on a grand scale. And if challenging for you that day was just waking up and getting there, that's a more truthful story and a more impactful story than coming up with a lie or bringing something down inside of the room. Also, this is a great opportunity. I'm going to say this, every interview research the person that you're going to be in front of interviewing, because the quickest way to answer this question is tell them a story that happened to them already. So just copy their story, say it right back to them, keep it moving.
Good stuff. I like that. I really like that idea of it not being about a negative, something negative that you kind of turned into something positive. Good advice. All right, anybody else want to chime in there? No, all right. Okay. So I'm running out of questions, folks. Here we go. Oh, okay, here's a good one. All right, so looking back again, when you were first starting off on in your career path, what was your dream job? And how did you pivot from that dream job? Or maybe you didn't, or maybe you are living your dream job. You know, and do you look back and think, oh, I regret this, I regret that? Or, you know, what's that story? Carol, I think were you trying to?
Sure. My dream job was to be a stage manager on a Broadway show. I didn't become a stage manager on a Broadway show, but I did get to work on a Broadway show as an associate producer. So yeah, so that's how I did it. And once I did it, I realized I didn't want to do it anymore, and changed directions.
Nice. All right. So your dream job was almost kind of like your first job until you discovered bigger dreams. All right. Nice. Anyone else want to weigh in on that? The idea of a dream job?
Yeah, I'm going to answer because I have to leave. I have to actually go back on set.
Yes, yes. Right.
What I'm going to say is I always wanted to tell stories, and I'm a person who can't sit down doing one thing for a very long time. So I want to act, I wanted to direct, I wanted to produce, I wanted to mentor, I wanted to do all those things. So entering the entertainment industry, I learned all those skills, which compounded my salary. So every time they hired me next, you have to pay me a certain amount because I now have this skill set on. And it's been a joy, and it's been way easier than I ever thought, because if you control your narrative, you control what you want to do. The moment you tell people what you want to do, the opportunities will start landing in front of you. They'll say, well, you should go over here. This door is open for you here. And it's been hard, but gratifying to know that you can carve out your own path. It's very cookie cutter out there in the world of idea of what a career is or whatever a path is. There's no such thing. You can dream tomorrow to do to be an astronaut and begin that path over there, or you can decide to direct on Broadway, and there's a million and one ways to get there. I will leave by saying the idea of your background, wherever you grew up. I'm a poor kid from the South who was raised in California. Wasn't a narrative I ever had to put on my back and use to get ahead in life. It's my reality, it's my truth, and as I accept that, but it's never who I was ever going to become, and ever anything that I was going to be crippled by. And you can do the same. It's just a part of your reality. It's never your shackle. I have to go.
So Nyland, just before you go, one more thing. Let's just cap everyone at age 40 right now, right? Everybody's at 40. If you were to give, and you're at the stage of your life right now, what would you give to your high school persona? What advice right now, because we do have high schoolers, what advice, if you can look back, what advice would you give to your 16-year-old self back then?
Slow down. Immediately slow down. Also, move away from home, even if it's 4 blocks.
Yes.
I'm serious. Get out of your norm. Comfort is, I think, where creativity goes to die. And I think comfort is the breeding ground for normal. And guess what? No one here on this call wants to be normal. No one ever wants to be called normal. Normal isn't a compliment. And you're only going to breed authenticity, individuality, your voice by being uncomfortable. And get used to it. It's a beautiful thing to be uncomfortable, because it will surprise you every day, and it will keep you living on this planet and keep you wanting to wake up the next day tomorrow. That's what I'll say.
You're here.
Thank you, Nyland.
Thank you, Nyland.
So much, Nyland.
Bye.
You are one of my favorite storytellers, that's for sure.
And there's Ashley. Hey, Ashley.
Ashley, oh.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Corinne, I have to jump at 3. I wanted to double back on the question you asked about dream job. This is a sobering fact, but the average American woman lives to be 83 years old. And most of us can't retire before we're 72, right? So the reality is that your dream job can change every 10 years, every 20 years if you want it to. And in fact, it might have to, unless you come from, generational wealth. So think about the fact that a dream job is no longer just a dream job. I could literally decide that tomorrow I'm going to take the LSAT and go become a lawyer for the second path of my career. I've been actually toying with that idea, and I could still work for another 20 years and have a viable retirement. So the definition of dream job to me has changed so dramatically given where we are as a society and how much older we live, gratefully. And to Nyland's point, I wish I had told my 16-year-old self to not be so prescriptive. Like, I always had to have a plan. I had a plan when I was 17. And I lived through that plan. And then when I got, to the end of the plan, I was like, I don't know what to do with myself anymore because I don't have a plan. So now I'm just comfortable with constantly revisiting my plan and making my plan a continuum. There's no start and stop. It's just something that's ever flowing. And depending on what's happening in my life, I change kind of on the dime. So don't be too hard on yourself. Have a plan, but allow for modifications as needed.
Good stuff. Thank you, Yvette. We really appreciated all your wonderful tips and your stories.
Thank you so much. Yes. Awesome.
Thank you, Yvette. Bye.
Yes, and Alfonsina, thank you so much for helping us get Yvette on this panel. We really do appreciate your support of our students as well.
Yvette is amazing. All the praise to her.
Yeah. So. If you guys need me, I will gladly, and hopefully we'll be able to do this in person soon. So everyone, enjoy the weekend. It's great seeing you all.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. So we still have Tony and Carol with us. And am I missing anybody? I'm out.
Can I answer that for the question? You're 40 years old. What would you tell your high school self?
Yes.
One thing I would say is learn a second language. Focus on being multilingual. If you already know a second language, yay, learn a third. I did not, and it slowed me down. I wish that I learned another language. I mean, ultimately I did, but it wasn't until I was 30 and it was harder. So learn another language. It'll open up opportunities.
That's an excellent recommendation, Carol. And there actually may be a lot of students here who are already bilingual. So for those of you, just a reminder that is a skill that you should put down on your resume and anywhere else. Tony, did you want to say something?
I was going to say, whatever job you have now should be your dream job, right? And if it's not, make a change, right? I think if you're not comfortable or happy wherever you are, why live another day being unhappy with where you are and dreaming of that other job? Go get it, right? I would also say, if I were to tell myself something now, I guess, as a teenager, I would probably do what Al suggested, right? Go and reach out to people much older than you and inquire about their career and ask for advice. I think even now I'm in my 30s, I'm gonna make it a point to go and still do that myself, because an average person goes through probably 2 or 3 career changes in their lifetime, so I'm gonna go make it a point to do it myself, and it's never too late, never too early to do it. I think Al, that was great advice.
Mm-hmm. I would say, similar to what Tony was kind of alluding to as well, is mentoring. I think a lot of times we don't know how to get a mentor. It's like, how do I ask? What do I ask? Who do I identify? Should they look like me, not like me? You got to kind of answer some of those questions for yourself. My strongest mentor is a German guy, white, looks a little nerdy. And we bonded on music. And I introduced him to hardcore hip hop, and he introduced me to Grateful Dead. Right? And we both ended up appreciating that. I think going in and just being honest and just saying, hey, I'm 17 and I don't know what it is I want to do. And you seem to do something that, I like, or you were on this video and it was really cool. And I'm interested in AR, VR, and that future. So I think it's finding a mentor or mentors, having a multitude of mentors and champions who help guide you, and because they have tons of connections outside of just whatever industry you're in, and they can help. And I think that I went down advertising and marketing, which I was interested in. But I think there were some decisions that I made, just foolish and no one to ask, that could have changed certain parts of my career path, even though I think they're moderately successful.
So Al, you actually threw in a question for me to throw out to all the panelists, which I think is a really good one, about what the future may hold. And I actually had a question for you guys about this in terms of what you are kind of predicting or forecasting in light of COVID within your specific sectors, because this is a conversation I had with some adults recently. And I think it's an important thing for our students to hear about is maybe within your sector, where do you see jobs kind of growing? And what are some of the skills with those jobs that you would associate? And then Al, maybe we'll get to the question that you threw in, because I think that could kind of get tied into that. But I think just in terms of like looking ahead, because so much has changed as a result of COVID in terms of the jobs that are in demand, the jobs that are no longer in demand and may remain so, and just the way that we work and what that requires and what new jobs came out of that. So I don't know if you guys want to weigh in a little bit in your specific sector. Tony, I'm sure that you can certainly talk to this because your industry has been a hugely a part of what's been going on in this last year. So.
Yeah. So Microsoft has this vague term. It's called digital transformation, right? They use that pretty loosely. So when a company digitally transforms, the idea is that the company is used to doing a certain way, maybe in a very legacy way of doing business, and then they transform into a company that maybe takes things online, uses e-commerce, uses more I guess modern ways of doing business. And Satya Nadella, who's the CEO of Microsoft, says, during COVID, there's been 7 years worth of digital transformation that were forced to happen overnight, right? So if you think about all these companies shifting and modifying themselves to survive in this state of COVID, that's what we've been seeing. And so what we do is we create software that allows for companies like the DOE, I'll call it a company even though maybe it's not a company, but businesses all around the world to really adopt remote work, right? We work in the Windows Virtual Desktop space. So we've seen a huge success overnight, unexpected, right place, right time, I guess. But I think the future of work is remote for the most part. I think the skill set you're going to need is actually more teamwork, right? If you're a sort of sole contributor to organization, you need to be more part of a team and to be able to do it remotely. But and I think commercial real estate is a clips of where that might fail really soon, right? What's going to happen to those commercial properties? Will they need to be repurposed into residential? Perhaps we keep talking about affordable housing. Who's going to be working in those spaces? So the sort of things that we think about all the time in our industry.
So within your industry, Tony, I'm sorry, and then I'll jump to you. What specific job titles would you say have grown in the last year and may continue to grow in the future?
I think sales has grown, believe it or not. Like when certain industries have definitely gotten hurt, but the industries that were in the right place, the right time, sales have increased. So they need more salespeople. They need more project engineering, people who are implementing these technologies to the evolving businesses that are adopting them. Customer success, right? So maybe you're on a team where you're working with a client and the client has purchased your widget or your object, right? Teams that support them and make sure that they have continued success with that product is important. Yeah, we're just seeing growth all around us, so I can't pinpoint. I can't even think of a position that would maybe go away, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, makes sense. Al?
So building off of what Tony just said, I want to scare and then and then hopefully inspire and direct. The reality is this, and I was saying this to students 5 years ago when I was working with Mecca and advertising students, so well before COVID. By 2025, I was saying at the time, by the time they graduate college and everything, they were going to truly be in a global world competing against students in Nairobi, in Shanghai, in Mumbai, in Toronto, in Sarajevo. You're competing in your programming, data science, all these career paths people are talking about. You're competing with people who have a cost of living half or a third what you have. And what that means is a business person is going to give them the job as a project or as an employee because it's cheaper than to give it to you, which means you have to now identify what you bring of value that they would hire someone who is more expensive than these other people in these other countries, right? And to Tony's point, there is a teamwork element, there's a project management, there is a cultural currency, there is a social dynamic. There are all these things in research, and we can talk about it later, but all these things that make up you that are valuable. And again, especially from New York, I'm biased, you know, a lot of New Yorkers and teens and adults.
Be the best in the world, right?
Yeah. But are cultural, or culturalists, right? They are influencers to varying degrees, but they impact language, they impact attire, they impact trends. And that's where a lot of the value is. And then similar to something that someone had mentioned before in terms of adding in a second language, because again, I always view it from an imposter syndrome spectrum. Speaking with an accent means one thing to me, and it should mean one thing to everybody. It means that you speak 2 languages, at least, right? Some people view that when they speak with an accent, then they're trying to cover it up because it's not a perfect English or it doesn't sound like everybody else. No, that means that you're fluent in at least 2 languages, which most Americans are not. So you should be taking that as a compliment and a cape and embracing that because it's going to help you deal with these other countries, whether it be in South America or India or Asia, where you need to collaborate with these other people, and going in, you have that skill set.
That's a great point, Al. Carol, I don't know if you wanted to weigh in a little bit.
I forgot what the question was. I was enwrapped it.
I know. I think we kept just changes as a result of COVID within your industry.
Yes.
And you should have a good story here, right? Because you kind of shifted and right?
I just did. Yes. So a couple of things. One, in the TV and film production and advertising production world, we're about to go into a major boom. The minute they really release the constrictions, open up the doors, all of this production is going to start happening all around the country and all around the world, but certainly all around the United States, New York, Los Angeles, Atlanta, although Georgia we're kind of staying away from for the most part, the Chicago area. There's going to be so much work, like more work than there are people doing it, because film and television has largely been shut down for a year, and there's mouths to feed as far as all of the different platforms that show programming and movies now. It's not just a few places anymore. And then advertising, because advertisers really reined things in, of course, last year as well, because nobody knew what was going to happen, and the economy was in a bad place last year. Everybody was sort of tightening budgets. And I know right now from my friends who live out in Los Angeles that commercial work is just going insane. So if anybody is out there that wants to get into the, film or television production business, now's a good time to do it, because they're going to need, especially for graduating seniors or college students, summer gigs or whatever, like everybody's going to be looking for production assistants and interns and all of that kind of stuff for all of the work that is going to be happening. And I put this in the chat because of COVID, because of what Al was saying about how, now companies, now that everybody's figured out that you can work virtually, they can hire somebody who lives in rural Arkansas to do the job that I was doing and pay them half of what I make. You have to be sort of a multi-hyphenate talent. So that, that's why I was like, speak 2 languages, and do more than one thing, which is why it's good not to just have one focus in life, unless you're, the best accountant in the world or the best, coder in the world. It's good to be able to have a big bag of tricks to pull things out of, writing, IT work, directing, project management, finance, like just sort of everything. And then it's impossible. Like there will be a job somewhere, somehow, that you can find your way to. Yes, versatility is valuable.
Absolutely. That's great advice. And I think we've definitely seen a lot of examples of that with people who have changed jobs this year. For example, a lot of the restaurants that shut down, all those people who were working in hotels and the hospitality industry actually moved into a lot of tech jobs that were, to what Tony was saying about customer service-based positions in technology, where because they had such great customer service skills working in the hospitality industry, they were able to say, well, I have these skills, I can just use them within this different industry. And so there's been a huge shift on that level. And I think to Carol's point, a lot of people who maybe moved jobs in this last year have left those positions that maybe kind of dwindled a bit, but now are going to come surging back. So there will be a surge back looking for employees, and they've already shifted off into other careers. So that's actually a really good opportunity for entry level for people who are just starting their career to get those jobs. And so that's also something to take into consideration for our young people. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah,
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tony. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna add, if you think you're good at something, you probably are, right? Don't take what you know and take that for granted, because, I always thought I was just like, oh yeah, I'm just a standard guy who knows this thing. And then, going into the job market, I realized very quickly that no, what you know is bigger and better than what most people maybe know, so don't put yourself in the same playing field. You think if you feel that you know something better than everybody else, it probably is true, right? So don't down yourself.
Corinne, can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
Sure. I'll start with Tony first, or maybe Carol. So for our students, our high school students, social emotional learning is such a huge thing, right? And some of our students are remote, and some of our students are hybrid. But for the students who are remote, and I am also a remote AP, and I mean, this is it, right? This is it. I wake up in here, I see the same people I live with, and it's all here. How do you go beyond, or are there challenges with you? Are you ever stuck in a rut? Look at Carol. Are you ever stuck in a rut? And then how do you go about it? That's one. Two, if you are supervising or you're managing a team or a crew, how do you support them with getting out of that rut? How do you motivate? How do you bridge? How do you support them with that social emotional? Tony?
I'm not a good candidate to ask that question to, because my wife says I'm a robot. So I have no problem doing this all day long. But I am excited because next week I'm flying out to Dallas for a week. This is the first in-person event that we're finally getting back to. So, with people getting vaccinated, people are looking to go out there again. And I'm super excited because I've been stuck indoors for over a year now.
Great.
But I haven't had a problem sort of working by myself and not going insane.
Carol?
I have. So a couple of things. One, during COVID, since last March 14th until now, I have been in a position where I was leading a team of about 16 people who we had to transition to full remote and then continue to manage all of those people. And that was really tough. It took us a couple of months to get everybody up and going. And then the way I continued, because, I'm very sociable. I was the kind of manager where I would do lots of drive-bys, people's offices and cubicles and spaces just to make sure people are okay. And everything had to pivot to these horrible Zoom calls. But what I did when I was leading a team was making a point of having face-to-face one-on-ones, at least in cyberspace, for 30 minutes once a week. And it filled my calendar, and it was very emotionally draining for me, but it was good for them. And it was sort of the, only way to do that. And then halfway through last year, I got laid off and had to look for a job virtually and started a job virtually. And that has, not to put too fine a point on it, sucked a lot. It is impossible to get to learn well, it's not impossible, but it's really hard to learn a new work culture from my couch, and learning the processes and where documents are kept, and how we're supposed to interact with the legal department, or who knows this knowledge through a Zoom call or through a shared drive, or text conversations, is really, really tough. And the only thing that I can say is, and I'm sure, I have a 15-year-old daughter who's in school in the room next door to us. And it's you have to be patient with yourself. You have to also be able to, and be okay with shutting your laptop down and walking away from it and getting some space, and remembering that life does not exist in this 13-inch square. And be okay with the fact that things may take longer and be a little harder because of all of this. But it's about to change. It's about to change. We're about to go back to slightly more real life interaction. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
I thought that was great.
So some of it is just having random conversations. Raise it in that don't have a defeatist mentality, right? So many of you might have have parents who are saying, well, you can't go out, right? Because there's COVID and you might get me sick, or grandma, or yourself, or whatever the case may be. That doesn't mean you can't change your room, right? That doesn't mean that you can't change the music and mood that you listen to before school starts or between classes. Take ownership, and that'll be the theme for today, at least for me. Take ownership of stuff instead of just relinquishing the reality of what's in front of you and just saying, well, no, there can be a different reality to it. So I would say, put up different pictures on the wall. If you have a printer and at home, be able to print out pictures of stuff that you like. If you have a magazine, and then post those up, and then change up the vibe, or the same way that you create mood boards at school. Or you could just view it and talk to some friends and do it from a design thinking scenario, right? And just say, hey, if we were solving for a freshman who had, who needed to be more invigorated with their mental health challenges of staying, motivated for school, and they couldn't go outside, what would we do? Right? Maybe two or three months, and then you figure out and you kind of design what you think you would tell that person in regards to how to change up their energy level, how to improve their moods, how to be aware of those moods, shifts and changes. So I think just an active participation of stuff, because again, you guys are in that age where you're gonna end up life.
Oh, Al, I think the mic is being covered. Sorry.
Yeah, it's windy here.
There we go. Yeah.
So I'll prepare a lot of seniors and say, you will not have guidance counselors and people as vested in you. Yeah, get dressed. Oh my God, that changes the mood, right? Sometimes just get dressed up, says the man in the sweatshirt, but whatever. I have to wear my Baruch sweatshirt. But you have control over some of these things to solve for it.
So I want to give our students an opportunity here to ask you guys some questions, because I'm sure that they have some. And I hope you guys aren't shy. Feel free to either raise your hand and then you can unmute yourself, or if you want to just drop a question in the chat, I can just share it out and we can answer it that way. Okay, so Shanil, I don't know if I'm saying your name right. Go ahead, you can unmute yourself if you'd like.
Hi. So I have a quick question, right? This is for kids who, well, let's say seniors who are, not motivated right now, and, they have no idea where they want to go. As for their career path, basically. What advice would you guys give them to motivate them, at least start it up a little bit in a slight way? Because, I know a lot of people, like a lot of my friends, they're not motivated right now. They're like, well, I don't know what I want to do in the future, and I don't feel like doing anything. I don't feel like going to college, so on and so forth. What's an advice that you would give them?
Great question.
I'll start and say, have them speak to somebody who's 25. Right? That 25-year-old is going to tell them some of the shoulda, woulda, coulda relative to their high school or college freshman year. So I think that helps. The other part is, I know when I was around 18, I was kind of floating in the wind. So the fact that during the COVID era that people are undecided or unmotivated, they have time to kind of be in their feelings, right? So for some of them, they can take a couple months to kind of be in their feelings. But that shoulda, woulda, coulda conversation hopefully gets them to realize that opportunity lost now can significantly impact them later, right? And then the last I'll say is what you like and what you're good at. Do that. If you surround yourself with what you like and what you're good at, then that's going to ideally lift you out of the funk and put you closer to the path that you're interested in. As I think Tony had talked about in terms of, or Yvette, you can be anything, right? And then Carol talked about the slashes, right? The hyphens, right? You can have multiple roles. So whether it's your side hustle or your dream job, surround yourself with what you like and what you're good at, and then hopefully that lifts you out the funk and it guides you to things of interest.
Also, I'll add just one thing. My mom made me, when I was 17 and or 16 and threatening to drop out of high school, she made me go get a job as a waitress at a diner. And it was great and I loved it, but it was hard ass work. And I, spent 6 months slinging hash, and it made me go, oh my God, I do not want to be a waitress my whole life. I'm going to finish my high school education and I'm going to go to college because I cannot do this all, you know, I can't see myself doing this when I'm 40. So, you know, sometimes you have to go do something awful to figure out what you might actually want to do.
Yeah, I mean, parents are probably going to be like that. If they work, I worked at a warehouse when I was 16, 15, 16, 17. And it reinforced what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be this. And then, again, I don't know if it relates to all the other students, but then you look at your parents or your situation and they go, okay, well, they're arguing because of money or they're frustrated because of money. And I need to put in, college doesn't make you smart, right? What college does is it gives you choices. And it makes you smarter ideally, but it gives you choices. So in order to be more comfortable in your life, to have less stresses, you need to put in the work to go to college ideally, right? There's a lot of career paths. IBM is one of them where they're saying you need your associates. You don't need to have a 4-year or bachelor's or a master's. But having a path where, you know, sometimes the trigger for some people is what you don't want to be. And then you move from there. And then for other people, it's what you're good at or what you like, and then you move in that direction.
Great. I loved your story, Carol, about waitressing, because I have my own waitressing story where I was working and this was while I was in college in the summer. I was working in a very fancy restaurant in the theater district that I was totally underqualified for, but I had a friend that worked there and she got me the job. And I found it to be the most mentally and physically exhausting work I've ever had in my entire life. You actually have to have an amazing memory, short-term memory, to be a good waiter. I think it was my third table. I had Danny Aiello. I don't know if maybe the adults here know what I'm talking about. Was one of my customers sitting with another gentleman, and they ordered mimosas. And that's very hard to carry on a tray while you're also pouring a Pellegrino at the same time. And the mimosa tipped over in my tray, and then the whole tray fell out of my hand into Danny Aiello's lap. And I had to just deal with that situation. So that's just another little story I just been throwing out there for students. You're gonna have a lot of moments like that in life where you just screw up or accidents happen. And you just have to recognize that that's okay. And that's just part of everything. It's part of life. And that shouldn't keep you from continuing, because I didn't make a big fuss about it. I just called the folks in to come clean it up, and we got them all set up. And one thing I learned in that industry is never say I'm sorry. But yeah, don't ever say you're sorry. Just, I'm gonna get you a new one of those. I'm gonna fix that. I'm gonna make that even better than the first one, right? So there you go, it's a little lesson for you. So any more questions from our students? I see Chanel's got her hand up again. Anybody else everyone's so quiet. Any questions? Okay, Chanel, go ahead.
So you just said that something you learned was to never say I'm sorry. Can I ask you why?
Well, that has a little bit to do with psychology of working with people. What you do when you say I'm sorry is you are acknowledging that you screwed up and that you're at fault, and that somehow makes what you did even worse, ironically, to the person who is affected. So you kind of want to very quickly move past that ugly thing that just happened. And the best way to do that is to just bring on the next thing, right? And that's really the key. So, and you can apply that to any work situation where, let's say you screwed something up, you missed a deadline, you know, rather than saying, oh man, I'm so sorry, I don't know what I was thinking, and spilling out a ton of excuses about why you missed that deadline. Just say, I'm on it right now, you know, I'll get it to you right away, or something on that level. It's a much more effective way of just showing people that you are dedicated, that you know how to get on something when you need to. So that's why I think it's just an effective strategy. Does that answer your question?
I agree with Corinne. It's especially something that girls are taught to do, is to apologize for just existing. I rarely say I'm sorry. Sometimes I will say apologies, but that's different than saying I'm sorry, because if you say you're sorry, you're also like giving the other person all the power. Like they're like, yeah, you should be sorry. And oftentimes when there's a situation, like certainly in my business, if there's a miscommunication or, you know, I don't meet a deadline, I am not the one at fault, but, you know, for whatever reason, it may be my responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. And if that doesn't happen, so I have nothing to be sorry about. So you need to be really careful. Words have a lot of power, and you need to, like, the word sorry should be stricken from your mouth unless you really do something just awful that you need to apologize for. But sorry is not a word girls should say. That's my advice.
I think there's an opportunity at a later point to refine situations on where to say it, because I'm going to assume Chanel has heard for the last 17 years to say sorry, and this is like a conflict of a cognitive dissonance in regards to what she's heard before. So there's definitely opportunities in the future to talk about where and when, or what phrasing to use instead of.
Yeah, and I don't mean don't say sorry to your mom, because if you need to say sorry to your mom, you better say sorry to your mom. But I'm talking in a work situation.
Yes, yes.
Well, I think, I mean, if I can just chime in, I think acknowledging mistakes and coming up with creative problems, like, okay, this is what happened and this is how I think we should resolve it. Because I remember early on in my career, I also went to Baruch before I was in counselor, and I was in an advertising agency, and the CEO said, I learned this early on. He said, don't come into my office without a solution. So, so instead of making excuses and saying sorry, you can acknowledge and sort of apologize, acknowledge, and this is how I think I'm going to fix this, or these are the suggestions. So that's worked for me, and that's what I usually tell students. You know, what's the answer? What do you think the answer is?
Yeah, yeah. And I think someone earlier said something about ownership. I think it might have been Al. I think it's also pointing to that. You're owning the situation. You're holding yourself accountable by not just saying, I'm sorry, and then throwing it in that person's lap to deal with, but saying, I'm going to fix this. And here's how I'm going to do it, right? Okay, good stuff. So any last questions from our students? And then if not, I will maybe ask one or two of my own to our panelists before we set them free for the weekend. No questions? Oh, so quiet. All right, well, I'm gonna throw something out that I think would be helpful for these students. There was a lot of talk about building a LinkedIn profile, and I think this could be a good weekend project for those students and for all of us. I'm always updating my LinkedIn profile. What are some tips that you would give them, considering the fact that many of these students probably don't have job experience, of what to put into that profile in its initial stages for that LinkedIn profile? Al, I'm sure you have some good tips.
I'll say have fun with it, right? You're at an age where you can have fun with it. I used to have a LinkedIn profile, and I'm not a chess player, but I wanted to communicate that I was strategic. So I would identify chess moves and what I did that matched those chess moves, right? Even though I wasn't that familiar with chess, ultimately for a checkmate. And I had fun with it. And people would reach out to me and they're like, oh my God, loved your LinkedIn page, right? And then never speak to them again. But whether it's a LinkedIn page, whether it's your own website, have fun with it that reflects your personality. So if you want to make it about gaming, make it about gaming. If you want to make it about almost like a mood board, make it about a mood board. Talk about what you've accomplished in high school. Talk about, and again, it could be just a struggle you have with math, right? A lot of people have issues with math, whether it be algebra or pre-cal. Talk about the struggle with pre-calculus, right? And how you overcame that. Sometimes that's, one of the answers to the questions of tell me something that you overcame. But I think there's definitely opportunities to moderately be professional while still be fun and expressing your personality.
Also things like, honestly, babysitting, tutoring, after school clubs, all of that stuff absolutely counts towards work experience, and should be any volunteer work through your church, a community organization, all that kind of stuff. Put that up there.
And that's where the mentoring comes into play, because you can have, like, when people say, well, I was only a babysitter, I was like, well, if the kid is still alive, you did a good job. And did you read to them? Then you help with the educational development of a child. Did you play with them? Probably, right? Then you help with the social engagement and activities of a child. Did you work at a restaurant? Oh, you were a busboy? Oh, did you have to, take care of the cloths that you were wiping down with? So then you followed OSHA regulations, tied to your role, right? There are, and sometimes you might have trouble with that story. And that's where I would say, again, get a mentor, find people who can help and guide, who can help with the storytelling of these boring stuff that you did, right? Even if you're bagging groceries, right? It has to go in a certain order, right? Or I'm going to come back with my broken eggs and I'm gonna give you the business, right? So you did things in a process, in an order, and you need to figure out or work on how to tell that story.
And I'll just add to that, don't overlook the objective part of the LinkedIn profile, because that's where you can kind of just say, I'm a student in this studying graphic design at my career in tech school, and I'm really interested in graphic design that's bold and whatever, that's where you can kind of say a little bit about who you are. And since most of you are CTE students, you should absolutely be putting that into your profile and the skills that you're learning. You don't have to be experts in those skills yet, but you're learning Adobe, you're learning lots of other programs. Those are all important things to put in there. And then try to get like a reference, try to get somebody to write one of those recommendations for you. That's also really great stuff. So good tips. I want to just get to a couple of the questions that students had in the chat.
$100,000 question.
Ambika,
can I answer that question? Because I'm going to have to jump in a minute. Ambika's question.
Yes, go ahead. That's the one I was trying to point to.
So I don't necessarily, risk worth the debt, the ROI, which means return on investment, if you don't know, of going to college and whatever it costs to go to college is absolutely going to pay off in the end. I don't necessarily advocate getting, $200,000 in debt. You do not have to get $200,000 in debt to go to college. But going to college is more about the degree or the major that you choose. It's about expanding your world, building a network, and basically growing up in a way that you can't do if you just stay at home. And I myself have, while I still work in the entertainment business, I got a very specific degree in stage management for theater. And I don't work in stage management or theater anymore. But the skills that I learned as a stage manager are absolutely adaptable to the work that I'm doing now. And, depending on what you want to study, be it business or English or film production or design, And, you know, you go, you get that degree, you come out and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to be a designer anymore. What I really want to do is open my own, you know, clothing store. Well, that what you learned in college absolutely will transfer. It may be hard to see it now because you're 18, because you're just starting out, but anything you learn in college will transfer to whatever career you ultimately wind up in.
Yes, and education is a lifelong process. So you should be continuing to learn throughout your career. I know for myself, I continually take courses online, many of which are free, or watch YouTube tutorials or Google it. But you should always be teaching yourself things and learning things and exposing yourself. That should never stop. But yes, absolutely the value of college. Anybody else want to answer that?
That's a fabulous question that I think so many of your peers are wrestling with. I'll throw out a couple numbers, and so some of it is facts and some of it is opinion. At least half of the people who graduate with a bachelor's don't end up in that career path, right? That's a reality. Some of those have transferable skills. Some of them don't, which is why we're having these conversations, and I'm happy that you're here, of fail fast, learn early. The other part of it is that if you go down a path of something that you love and you like, you could still probably get paid well and it feel less like work. So that's something that I think that we're all aspiring for. I got my marketing degree, went into advertising, which is related. I work in corporate social responsibility now, which I don't have a degree in. And during COVID, which is my other point, be a life learner, right? Always be learning. If you're learning, you're like a shark. A shark has to always be moving or it dies, right? You should always be learning. So last year, while I was trapped indoors as trying to be a good person and stay safe, I got my real estate license. So I used the advertising skills that I learned before of building relationships, building trust, doing the return on investment, the analytics of where you should put your money that I learned, that I did for advertising. And now I'm guiding people in real estate. And again, and I'm mentoring a lot. And that's what a real estate agent, ideally a real estate agent is, someone who mentors and guides and helps with the math part that some other people might be unaware of or unsure about. So, and then next, I want to learn Spanish. Right? I speak French. My parents are of Haitian descent, so I speak French and Creole. But I want to learn Spanish because I want to live somewhere warm, and whether that's Miami or Panama, the ability to speak Spanish is going to be critical to that aspect as well. So always be learning, always be growing. But the simple part of it is, or like the last part is, I reinforce, because I do a little financial literacy suggestions, CUNY versus SUNY, unless you have the scholarships for room and board, because you're going to end up with $40,000 to $50,000 in room and board costs. Oh yeah, I see you, Natalie. You're going to end up with room and board costs, and this is where I slightly disagree with it might have been Carol or the gentleman that left earlier. Yes, leave home sooner rather than later, but balance that in regards to the financials, because rent for a 2-bedroom is going to be $1,200 right now. It's favorable now. It's going to be $1,250 at minimum by the time you graduate college. Even if you have a salary of $55,000, it's going to cut into your salary. So yes, you should explore and get out of the house and live and travel, but it's important to find that financial literacy balance, which is a critical issue that a lot of people have. Go ahead, Carol, show it off. Show it off, Carol.
I think this is a difference between boys and girls, because I don't know, girls always want to break free and boys are content staying at their parents' homes for like till their 30s. So I'm just,
me.
I'm just creating ridiculous gross generalizations. So Any last comments for our students before we sign off today? Any last tips, words of advice? Oh, Natalie has a quick question. Natalie, did you want to throw out a quick question?
Yes, I about speaking about how, you know, you have to balance, you know, wanting to go live on your own, but also living at home. I would say there are some people that aren't allowed to be living at home because either they have family issues or maybe their family wants to kick them out. So I want to know if maybe you know of any options for those people.
Well, I think you touch on a couple things. One, whether it's financial aid, whether it is social programs, your guidance counselors are a wealth of knowledge. And I think they are overwhelmed but underutilized at the same time. Your guidance counselors can definitely give you guidance in regards to the financial issues or grants and scholarships. And it goes back to the storytelling. You have the potential to make $1,000 if you put 10 hours towards a scholarship. You get a scholarship for $1,000 scholarship pretty easy if you put 10 hours between back and forth and sharing it with somebody, and they give you feedback and stuff like that. So there are efforts that you can control in regards to maximizing the number of scholarships. There are tons of issues that I've never dealt with that I can feel for people, whether it is you currently in a shelter, whether it's unhealthy for other reasons to be at home, whether your parents are like 18, bye, right, or high school grad, bye, right? I didn't have to deal with that, and I totally empathize with those situations. That's where, again, godparents, uncles, outreach, school administration, and they can potentially give you guidance on programs. There's one student that was after they turned 18 and after they graduated who was trans, who stayed with me for a couple of weeks because they were going into a transitional housing because they were having issues at home, right? And it wasn't ideal to be at home anymore. That's not going to happen in most situations. Not a lot of adults are comfortable with that situation. But you're not going to know until you ask. And the world's not fair. Some of it you might be dealing with now, some of it you're dealing in the future. But a lot of times you kind of have to put yourself out there, and you have to kind of like research and Google. Google some of the options or social programs or housing kind of programs or grants, or let financial aid office know at your school. And they might have special scholarships or grant programs too. But there's a term that says closed mouths don't get fed. So to some degree, even if it's humbling, speak up and let key people know.
Can I say something quick? Very quickly?
Sure. Yes.
Yes, hi, I am Marilyn Gonzalez. I'm from Newtown High School. Tony Kai is one of our industry partners. I know that growing up, my parents raised me to be extremely resilient. They were always pushing that trait on me since a very early age. I dreaded going to them to tell them about a problem because they will both tell me, oh, come with 2 solutions. So it was like a mindset that they dig on me. Tony is an extremely resilient person, and I know he's very humble. He doesn't brag, but I just wanted to bring this story. When we were up for CTE reapproval, I'm a little OCD. I wanted perfect attendance from my industry partners for the reapproval. So Tony, at that moment was traveling from work for work. This is pre-COVID. And I remember he said, you know what, how about we do a little video? And then this is when his technical skills kick in and his resilient attitude. So I said, yeah, right, sure. So I think that having the mentality of adjusting and going in out of your comfort zone, looking for solutions, always thinking outside the box, it's really, really helpful. And this is something that I drain on my students all the time. Not a no for an answer. If you cannot draw it, have someone else draw it. If you cannot write it, do a video. If you cannot submit it, you didn't have electrical, call me. I want to hear from you. Submit it verbally. But there is always that, that mindset of it can happen, you could do it, and it doesn't need to be black or white. We can go in the middle point. So thanks, Tony, for that video pre-COVID.
You're welcome. Yeah, so I mean, I always have the attitude, figure it the F out, right? Just get it done. However you get it done. So you'll never die,
Yes, resilience is certainly an important attribute, especially these days. Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. I think we're out of time. I want to thank all of the students for joining today. I hope that this was helpful for you. I want to thank our panel for just all the great stories, really great tips. I think, Joyce, you hit record, which is great. So we will share this recording with you guys if you want to revisit some of the conversation and maybe take notes or just for inspiration. So we will blast this out to you once it's officially downloaded. And thank you all again. This has been so fun. And I know I've learned a lot. Everybody else. Thank you again, guys.
Thanks. Yes, thank you all.
Have a great weekend. So much.
Thank you, Corinne. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Madeline. Thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Carrie. Our unsung heroes, our teachers. Yes.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Al,
and Eileen is awesome.
One-liners, Al. Thank you for your one-liners. That's Al. You need to write
Eileen
a book.
Eileen is one of our business teachers in our school, and she's also a media person. And always posting that really nice website you told me about, right? Yeah, no, we have on Instagram, so she's in charge of that. She's always posting our CTE activities on Instagram, and I really thank her because a lot of our success is driven because the students are aware that these activities are happening, and you know how they are with social media; they're tight with it. So awesome! All right, guys, always thank you, Eileen.
Joyce, I know you have to hop on the train.
Yes, I've already missed several, but that's all right. Hey,
okay.
It's all for the kids, right?
All right, Corinne,
thanks, Corinne. This was so great. We'll have to do it again for sure.
I think so. I think it would be great if we can do this now for girls, just like maybe have a strong female panel.
Yep.
All right. Yep. All right, guys. I'm living in the moment, Natalie. I'm not talking about the next one. I'm enjoying this one.
I know. Listen, no, but I actually hit record, so I'm gonna stop it now.
Okay, awesome. Bye, guys.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Yeah, I had a sense that the students really appreciated what the speakers were saying because they hear the teachers all the time. Like I've told my stories, but now they're seeing 5 different careers, and it wasn't a formula like you do this, and then you'll get into this college or this art school. But I really think that all the perspectives worked very well today.
Yeah, I agree. I think also in some ways we had very different personalities in who the panelists were. And I really think that makes a huge difference. I loved having Nyland's very creative element in there.
And it was funny.
Very technical. Yeah, I think that, it's important because I think it speaks to different students. Some students, just so I think that kind of range was cool.
That helped a lot. Yeah, that was really good. So and it went fast.
Yeah, it did. I know.
Considering it's 4 o'clock now.
I thought we were going to run out of time because I'm what question?
No, it was good.
But
okay, well, have a great weekend. Thank you so much.
It was
really
bye.
Good.
Thank you. Bye. Bye,
Thanks,
Carrie.
Bye. Bye, Natalie. This was so
great.
Fun.
I think so. Oh my gosh, Corinne.
Yeah.
We owe you lunch, dinner, brunch, breakfast. And you're out of Long Island. You're out in Long Island.
No, this was so fun. Trust me. I would do 100 of these and not have to do commission meetings, which are such a headache in themselves. I have 2 commission meetings coming up next week, and I need to get that together. It's crazy. And I just had one yesterday. But these kinds of things are always fun. I love it.
Yeah, but the sun came out. I don't know what.
I know.
It came out, so I'm going to enjoy.
Go.
All right,
Get some
take
sun.
care. Okay, bye-bye.
Enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.
You too.